video. This is obviously the graph of sub counts for the earlier years of World of Warcraft. And the title of this video is Why Did It All Go Wrong for Warcraft here? I'm going to assume he's talking about like in this area here. And you got to ask yourself, like, why did it stop? Why did the number of people that were playing, why did it slow down? Why did the sub count slow down? Like you can see it just kind of kept powering through like Burning Crusade and stuff like that. But why did it slow down? Like people keep talking about Wrath of the Lich King being kind of the pinnacle of, you know, the best times in World of Warcraft. But I actually think that it was before that, because if you look at Wrath of the Lich King, like it's the sub count is slowed down. It's barely going up. So there's obviously a lot of people that, you know, they've heard the hype. They're coming to play Wrath of the Lich King, but there's just almost as many people that are leaving, that are actually quitting the game at that point. And that's kind of the point where, like right here, where you start to see sub counts kind of stagnate. And that means that a lot of people are leaving the game. As people are coming, there's people that are leaving. And there's probably more people leaving at this point than at any point before this in World of Warcraft, right? Obviously, it got even worse into Cataclysm, and it hasn't ever really recovered from that. But I think it was at this point where a lot of people, myself included, started to realize that, hey, you know what? I'm just not really enjoying this game as much anymore. In fact, Wrath of the Lich King, I actually stopped playing for the first time World of Warcraft, but I allowed my sub to actually continue to go for like 6 months into Cataclysm. So I want to say probably halfway or 2/3 of the way through Wrath of the Lich King is when I stopped playing Wrath. I was just like, okay, I'm kind of bored of this game. And I didn't really pin it on any particular reason why. I just wasn't having as much fun. And I think I fall into that category of these people that quit the game, as a lot of other people were kind of joining at that point. So anyways, let's see what Willie has to say about why it all went wrong here. I don't know exactly which period. I'm going to assume he means somewhere in here or at this particular point here. So let's see what he says.
Now, most of us have seen this chart. Originally published in late 2015, it showed the gradual rise of World of Warcraft subcount alongside the first 3 expansions and the fall in the subsequent 3. Peaking at some 12 million subscribers in late 2010 to 11 during the latter part of Wrath and the launch of Cata, down to 9.1 million by the end of the Cataclysm.
Yeah, Wrath didn't seem to have that big of a spike, did it? That's actually true. You started playing more in Wrath, quit in Cata, as the graph shows. Yeah, that's when I kind of quit as well. And like, to be fair, like a lot of people would be like, oh, you know, MMOs kind of had their day. I don't necessarily think there's more people playing MMOs now than there ever were before. So obviously there's competition, but you've also got to put some of the blame on the quality of the game as well, right? Like they haven't really. I also think that in Cataclysm, you know, they started to do a lot of things like with the shop and adding things that people didn't necessarily like. So, and Cataclysm to me, I obviously did not like the expansion. We just talked about this like 20 minutes before we started the video. And the one good thing that I loved about Cataclysm was Rated Battlegrounds. Honestly, I would be fine with Rated Battlegrounds being in Classic. I love Rated Battlegrounds. I think it's amazing. But aside from that, I really was not a fan of Cataclysm at all. So anyways, we'll continue on.
6.8 million by the end of Mists of Pandaria. And whilst Warlords of Draenor saw a remarkable surge on launch back up to 10 million concurrent subscribers, it lost nearly 50% of those within the first 6 months. At which point in time Blizzard decided there were better metrics to measure the game's performance and stopped publicly sharing this information. You know, in 2024, World of Warcraft as an MMORPG will turn 20 years old. And for about the same amount of years, there's been a non-stop stream of WoW killers, doomsayers.
That's pretty insane when you think about it. This game has been going relatively strong for 20 years now.
WoW dying askers, and yet it remains. Though it may not be on the same level of industry-wide gaming powerhouse that it once was, it certainly looks to be so among its genre. But why did it begin to lose players at such a shocking rate? When you actually take a look at the numbers, Warlords of Draenor lost more subscribers in 6 months.
I remember when I saw the trailer for WoD, I was so excited. I was like, finally, we're going to go back to the type of World of Warcraft that I want to play. And that I've told people many times before, do not, because when we watched the Dragonflight trailer, I was like, that looked terrible. And then I instantly remembered the WoD trailer, and I'm like, wait, we cannot judge a game based on its trailer on whether or not it's going to be good or not. Because if we've seen anything, we've looked at other trailers in the past that have been exceptional, like WoD, and the game turned out to be absolutely terrible. So
months than TBC and
yeah, that's exactly it. People thought WoD was going to be TBC 2.0. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, oh man, we're going back to the days of TBC and this is going to be so much fun. It was anything but.
Gained together in 4 years. Well, that loss began somewhere, and that was during World of Warcraft's third expansion, Cataclysm. Did Cata just suck? Was the time of the...
See, this is what I mean. Like, a lot of people keep pointing to Cataclysm. I think the problem started before then. Like, there was still that rush of people that were coming to come play the big MMO, blah, blah, blah type of thing. But there were still just as many people that were basically leaving in Wrath of the Lich King because they weren't enjoying the game anymore. You weren't seeing that climb of new player base anymore. It was rather stagnant. So I think it started before Cataclysm.
The MMO over. What gives? Today, I want to take a look at what went wrong for World of Warcraft at this point in time, both in-game and out. Before we go on, I want to do a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Keeps. Keeps is an online subscription service that helps men keep their hair where it counts, with treatment sent straight to your door and a track record of improvement within 6 months for most. So it was a late 2011. I was still at university, youngest classic WoW player.
By the way, if you want to support Willie's channel, I'll leave the links down below, of course. You can go to, if you're having hair follicle issues, you can go to his channel, and I'm sure he's got a code, and you can help him out.
Seen the latest cinematic, Deathwing the Destroyer bursts forth from the earth, driven mad and swearing to consume the entirety of Azeroth in
I remember
flames.
watching that
and
at the
an
BlizzCon.
expansion is always hype. You saw the charts at the start. Blizzard makes something new, number goes up. It just works. Wrath of the Lich King had seen the greatest engagement and concurrent subscribers of any version of World of Warcraft so far. So Cataclysm naturally had a lot to live up to, and I think one of the overarching goals was to modernize the game a little bit, bring it up to speed and give it new coats of paint, I suppose. Remember that this game launched in 2004, and this was some 7 years later, where the base game had gone near unchanged. Well, that was about to change, and pretty significantly too, because Cataclysm didn't have Outland or a Northrend. It was the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor that were receiving changes. Oberdeen was destroyed, as shown in the cinematic by the way. Huge rifts opened up in the world in Darkshore and Stranglethorn Vale, and the Barrens was divided up in two, and this was one of the first real...
Every time I haven't played retail in several years, but every time when I was still playing retail, if I had to fly over like the Barrens or Thousand Needles, I would get angry. I would legitimately, I'd be like, I hate what they did here.
Talking points that people hit on for Cata. The old world revamp made it not really feel like Azeroth anymore, and alongside flying now being available on the base game continents, well, it was hard to argue. For me, Westfall is my all-time favorite zone in World of Warcraft. The mysterious story of the Defias Brotherhood, cutting through their ranks, traveling around the world to learn of their leader, intercepting the messenger, topped off with a good old run through the Dead Mines, hopefully seeing a cruel barb drop. And in Cataclysm, well, there isn't an Edwin Van Cleef waiting at the end of Dead Mines anymore. You witness the rise of a new leader of this organization, and you have a revamped dungeon. It's just all, well, different, isn't it? Oh, and old Blanchy dies too in Cataclysm, but she's a mount in Shadowlands, and apparently she was an evil horse in life as she was sent to Revendreth. The more you know. And with the whole world changing, so did questing, just like the Defias chain I was talking about. Red Ridge Mountains became an ode to Rambo, many unique vanilla quest rewards were removed and updated, and armor was also changed to, well, make sense for the spec that you're playing, even more so than was the case between vanilla and Wrath, that is. In fact, Blizzard have been updating quest rewards since TBC, because vanilla had absolute gems like this. And the questing revamp was an area that players took issue with as well. Uldum, one of the new zones, has a huge quest chain which is pretty clearly centered around movie character Indiana Jones. Vashir has historically always been a negative talking point.
When I played Cataclysm, I started off in Vashir. It's probably the reason why I hate swimming quests so much. Like, I absolutely hated this zone. I picked the wrong zone because there was the There was the other zone that you could pick. Like you had a choice between Vashir and what was the other one? I can't remember. And I took Vashir. It was, oh my god. It is. You're right. It is the worst zone in the history of World of Warcraft. I think. If you were to ask me, you know how we always talk about what are your five favorite zones of all time? Okay, it's usually 5 or 4 in vanilla, and then Grizzly Hills. If you were to ask me my 5 worst, it would be this zone 5 times. I hated it.
Too, even though it was optional content and you could have just started in Mount Hyjal instead. Though
So yeah,
about
that was the
overusing
option. It was either to go to Mount Hyjal or Vashir, and I took Vashir.
Culture in World of Warcraft during Cataclysm is a bit, I don't know. Yes, there was a lot of it, but there always has been in World of Warcraft. Here's a few not too subtle references from the Death Knight starter zone. We have a quest called Tonight We Dine in Hell, pretty clear reference to 300. I have a little quote from the quest here, the gift that keeps on giving. I have come from the frozen heart of Naxxramas to feast on souls and deliver a vicious threshing upon our sworn enemies. And I'm all out of souls. Sounds rather like Duke Nukem to me. And we even have a quest called...
What are my other top 4? You know what? Before Classic came out, it was maybe a little bit different than it is now. Before Classic... No, it's probably still about the same. I still love the Barrens. It's kind of a dull, boring zone, but I still like the Barrens for some reason. Stragglethorn Vale would be another one because I love all the quests and the PvP that are in there. Hinterlands, oddly enough... I probably have to narrow it to like 6 or 7. Like I love Hinterlands, and a lot of people don't care. You know, they're not really big fans of Hinterlands. I love I love both Hillsbrad and Arathi Highlands. So those are probably getting Wintergrasp. Sure, not Wintergrasp. Why am I forgetting the name of the zone now? Winter Spring. Sorry. Used to be another one, but now not so much. Like that's the one where like before Classic launched, it was Winter Spring was always in my top 5. It's not in my top 5 anymore. For sure not my top 5 anymore.
Grand Theft Palomino. I mean, come on. All 3 of these are from the DK starter zone, remember? As in the start of a high fantasy new class to World of Warcraft, which has a pretty serious story arc in the battle for Light's Hope Chapel, and your Death Knight then going on to join your faction. Kind of like how Uldum has a bit of silliness with Harrison Jones winging around ancient tombs, but then you also have the Halls of Origination, which was rumoured to contain a device which could reorder all life on Azeroth, which isn't exactly a good thing. Maybe it was just a bit more prominent and in your face in Cata, but Blizzard have always made World of Warcraft like this. And on the topic of the world, Blizzard a little while ago did a post on the design pillars for Classic, where they say, the world is the main character. This pillar of design means we need to preserve the world we have created from excessive changes. How exactly does that fit in with Cata Classic then, when part of the expansion is the entire world changing? One final thing about the old world and quests changing is a lot less people these days are joining the game, and it's gone in more of a seasonal direction, I feel. Also, we don't have an LFD, so there's going to be even less people running dungeons. Also, the new zones in Cata all require flying to certain degrees. All in all though, if I had to pick one, I do think I have a preference towards the older world that Vanilla had. Anyways, I want to move on from this point as I've got a lot more to cover. So I just mentioned that I think the game has gone in more of a seasonal direction, as in new patch happens, you play the new patch for a bit, until you get bored, you wait for the next patch, and you repeat. I'd wager that per sub, people are spending on average less time in game than they were in 2010 by quite a large margin. Now,
for sure.
Many games have fully embraced this pattern. On retail, they don't have new patches anymore. They instead call them seasons.
They give you just enough content so that you will have your sub for that patch. And just at the point where you're like, okay, I'm kind of getting bored, there will be another patch coming out in like a month, so you don't actually like stop subbing, basically.
And a season in retail will entail a new arena season, a new Mythic Plus season, new raid, new set of gear, and so on. It's as if each patch is a reset. Now, I want to bring 2 things up here. This whole idea of the seasonality of the game really began in Wrath. In Classic, gear and itemization was absolutely all over the place. Some items from Molten Core were Biss nearly forever because stuff like hit was allocated in entire percentages, and the difference between 1% hit and 2% is actually kind of a big big deal. In TBC, this was less of the case. There are some outliers here, such as Dragonspine Trophy, Serpent Coil Braid from Serpent Shrine Cavern, and Cursed Vision of Sargeras from Illidan were great, to name a few. In Wrath, there's straight up a new currency, or at least there was originally, in each new patch through badges. And you know how Blizzard are currently considering how to boost up item levels in Ulduar and then creating Heroic plus Dungeon difficulty for the old Ray loot? Yeah, that's because the first time around Trial of the Crusader made the vast majority of Ulduar content irrelevant the moment it released. The Blizzard developer, Chris Zerhut, who implemented original Wrath gear levels, is working on Classic, and these are literally his ideas. I don't know how else I can put this. Seasonal WoW started in Wrath, but future expansions definitely continued to lean into it. Also, okay, this is going probably the most off topic I managed to go in a video in quite a while, but I want to say it. I can see a day where subscription is replaced by Battle Pass, and that free-to-play and
Save $24 per year. I'm not kidding you. I haven't bought this yet. I know that I'm going to be subbed on 2 accounts for another year. Like I know I'm going to, so it's like, you know, I'm probably going to buy this and give Blizzard my money before I've actually, you know, gotten it, you know, received any content for it, right? Like they get my money early or whatever. But I'm looking at it going, you know, that's $50 that I save. 50 bucks, or well, $48 American that I save. That's like $3,000 Canadian, by the way. That's 2 months rent for me.
and Battle Pass becomes the go-to monetization for MMORPGs. We know Microsoft is buying out Activision Blizzard. World of Warcraft could be added to a Game Pass, but then for each new season of the game, hey, let's try and bring out something for people who play the game seasonally. Think of how many other games do Battle Passes: Call of Duty, Fortnite, League of Legends, Teamfight Tactics, Valorant. Hey, even Blizzard's giving it another shot at the moment with Overwatch. The Riot MMO will be free to play and will have battle passes. You heard it here first. And yes, they will try to sell you cosmetics outside of that too. Anyways, back to the video. Talents and itemization. So back from 2011,
you know what? I haven't not really been paying too much attention to Riot's MMO. I haven't seen any sort of videos, like any footage videos of theirs yet. So I really have no idea what it's going to be like at all, but be interesting
time and time again, if I go through comments, that it was
to
claimed that Kata dumbed down the game. Talents went from these sprawling trees of Wrath of the Lich King to far more linear, where you were required to invest 31 points into a tree before you could explore your other options. And stats were simplified down a lot. It was in Kata that equipping your classes appropriate armor set.
You had to put 31 points into a tree in Kata before you could I actually totally forgot about that.
That gave you 5% main stat. So now paladins wear plates, shamans wear mail, and so on. Gone were the days of warriors enjoying a nice bit of leather. Secondary stats were streamlined, and generally you had much less decision making with gear, and reforging even allowed you to reallocate 40% of a secondary stat to one of your preference, making even suboptimal stats become quite good. From a theory crafter point of view, yeah, you bet it was simpler, a whole lot simpler at that. These days, through talents, guides, bit lists, simcraft, it's just also easily available to anyone who wants to put some effort into their character. I've said it before and I'll say it again, what made the old talents interesting wasn't the size of the talent tree, it was the fact that they changed it often. Back then Blizzard did big class changes mid-expansion or even mid-patch.
I remember that.
Flavor of the month began
I remember, like, every time there was a big patch, the first thing you'd be doing is going down and looking to see what nerfs your class got, or what buffs possibly your class got.
Rise in prominence in original Wrath because of this.
They
also,
probably
when I
still
read
do
dumbed
that,
down
but
gameplay compared to Classic or TBC after having experienced Classic and TBC is just, I can't take that seriously whatsoever. The Warlocks go back to just pressing Shadow Bolt for their entire rotation in Cataclysm? No, they don't. Even the average class gameplay in Wrath is so much more involved than Classic or TBC. There's preference one way or the other, and I get that, but you have an actual rotation now for most classes. You have timing cooldowns, snapshotting, and so on. There is just objectively more going on. And even in Wrath Classic today, after a decade or more of fan servers, players are still innovating new ways to optimize the game. Rogues using Fell Striker have become the best AoE class in the game. Dual wielding and Holy Death Knights with their pets doing about 70% of their damage thanks to snapshotting and so on. Kata is going to have seen way less testing, and I bet there will still be loads of new things to discover. I think people are making a bigger deal out of this than it really was, and it will be fine whenever they finally do it. Again, just in my opinion. Next, raids and the story. Deathwing, the first big villain to fall short on their boss fight, and yeah, I kind of agree on this one. By Dragon Soul, a lot of classes were actually pretty fun to play. There was just something about the raid which didn't A, live up to previous tiers, or B, feel like a super good send-off for the big villain. Also, Dragon Soul went on for way too long, a trend that would go on to repeat itself in future World of Warcraft expansions. Dragon Soul dropped on 29th November 2011, Mists of Pandaria was on the 25th of September 2012. At least in Classic they get to pick the dates for it, right? Dragon Soul also introduced the highly controversial looking for raid feature.
Oh my
Debates
God.
on the benefit for the game, or lack thereof, continue on this to this day. I imagine I'll
Turned
be
it into a
talking
solo
about it a
player
lot more
game.
someday in the future, but as to not overdo it here, I'll confidently assume if Wrath has no LFD, there's no way Kata will have an LFR. Alongside raiding, I also think the launch content was straight up too hard for the majority of players. Blizzard had heard that Wrath of the Lich King heroics were too easy, so they completely 180'd that for Kata, and with an LFD system at the time, it was a disaster waiting to happen. Raiding also kept a format similar to what was available in Icecrown Citadel with heroic 10 and 25 man, but now instead both of these gave the same levels of loot. 25 just awarded more items, which sounds great until you remember how some fights are scaled between the two difficulties. There were those fights which were just so much harder on 10 man. Halphus Wormbreaker comes to mind here. There's a reason Blizzard eventually swapped to 20 man mythics, and it was all about balancing the content for the appropriate number of players. I often hear too that Wrath of the Lich King was the real end of World of Warcraft from a story point of view. We beat Arthas, we finished the storyline that began with Warcraft 3. That's it, job done. But isn't there still this army of never-ending demons led by a titan hellbent on the entire destruction of Azeroth? Is that not a little bit of a loose end there, as in the same legion that was tied to Arthas becoming the Lich King in the first place? For me, if there was ever a time of feeling that we're beating the big bad for good, it was in Legion, without a doubt. And yes, there's always going to be threats to the world. Even an expansion that had us making friends with pandas and farming, we were also battling an old
I remember when I saw the
and let's be real,
mob
we need a reason to go into
trailer,
raids and
I
get
was
those
like,
purple
you've got to be
items.
joking.
For me, the raid of Dragon Soul was a bit more of a letdown than the actual story of the expansion itself. But outside the World of Warcraft, things were also changing. Times were moving on. Few games have ever remained at the top for as long and consistently as World of Warcraft did. And at the time, many new games were releasing. Not necessarily MMORPGs either, but titles more specifically aimed at people wanting to engage in PvP content. Now, I genuinely believe a good portion of the players that World of Warcraft lost were those ones solely dedicated to player versus player content, because A, WoW hadn't done enough to evolve the PvP scene since
There's a
TBC,
lot of really top.
and B, it was just too time
There's a
consuming.
lot of really top players in FPS games that got their start in World of Warcraft that still play World of Warcraft from time to time as well. Shroud's one of them, for example. There's a couple of other guys that are really top FPS streamers that were really, really good in threes tournaments and stuff like that.
Consuming to get into.
they
Kata
don't
had
play WoW
rated
anymore.
Battlegrounds, which I think Blizzard could have full on said, you know what, we're just going to throw this into Wrath or Classic, and it would have been a positively received change. But at the moment, it's still just Arena and Battlegrounds, the same as TBC, just different class balancing. And World of Warcraft, being an MMORPG, as many of them do, needs heavy time investment. You can't just go from Warrior to Druid one game to the next without dozens of hours put into the game. This matters more in PvP, as something being overpowered is more frustrating when it's deleting your main in 3 seconds as opposed to just beating you on DPS meters. Particularly MOBAs at the time were on a massive streak. Riot's League of Legends went from a reported 1.4 million daily players in mid-2011 to 27 million daily players by early 2014. I think a lot of players got a taste of PvP balancing and tuning made specifically for PvP and did not look back. Not necessarily just from League, that's one example at the time, but no longer
never
did
really
you
played
have
League.
to
I
deal
downloaded
with
it
having
once
to get
and then never really
PvE
played.
bits. No leveling, no gearing, no PvE balance changes messing up your PvP, no having to spin the 2 plates of these different areas of the game together. It was like taking a car and stripping out all the excess seats, the heater, the radio,
Not a
all the
fan of
unnecessary
these
stuff stuff just so
these
it can
types
go
of games.
faster. That's what MOBAs did to MMOs. Get straight into the PvP, no messing about. League is one example. These days you have a ton more with the recent popularity of Battle Royale games, but I do think it was competition outside the MMO genre, not inside, that led a lot of players to let their sub lapse. Oh, and by the way, the competition was free too, which doesn't exactly hurt. Whatever caused the downward trend to begin, it was definitely a complicated thing and a series of decisions that either didn't resonate with the current player base or weren't sufficient for players to keep justifying a monthly fee. I think, and oh boy does this happen a lot, people have a tendency to say, I didn't like X thing, therefore X thing is why the game died. People will tell you to this day that flying killed WoW. Blizzard tried taking it away again in Warlords of Draenor, didn't go so well. For Kata, overall I can agree with the common criticisms I went over in this video, though I think
I don't know if I agree with that last statement. Like some people, like people that love flying or whatever, I think a lot of classic players will tell you that they do not like flying, and a lot of retail players will tell you that they do. So, and I think by the time what expansion was he talking about there? Hold on.
again in Warlords of Draenor, didn't go so well. For
Okay, WoD. So it was already in WoD when they, I guess, were suggesting they were going to take flying away. I don't remember this, but I think already at that point, the classic player base had already left the game. Like a lot of those players had already left, or there were players like me that played each expansion for like 3 months and then stopped playing. They were like, "No, I'm bored. This is boring." A lot of people, if you're on the side of people that like flying, it's because you like getting from point A to point B, and you like mounts. Like it's generally one of those two reasons. You don't want to have to deal with flight paths and all that sort of stuff. For players like myself, flying, and I used to be pro flying. Like I don't know if you guys remember back in when we were playing private servers or before Classic launched or whatever, we'd talk about flying, and I would be like, you know what, flying to me wasn't too bad because I could find people faster to kill in the game. But I quickly realized that it was, in my opinion, terrible for world PvP because people can escape too easily. And it to me now, if you were to ask me for the classic version of the game, not retail, but for the classic version of the game, flying is bad for the game, in my personal opinion. Now, if you want to argue flying is better, you like flying because it's allows you to get from point A to point B really fast, or you like mounts. Okay, that's not what I'm arguing. I like my flying mounts as well. I just got the Headless Horseman mount and love it. Absolutely love it. It's my favorite mount that I've ever had. But if you were to ask me, is flying bad for the game? Yes, because it adds that extra sort of dimension where players can be and not interacting in the game. So instead of running into people constantly on the ground, they can be flying at multiple levels up in the air as well. So you have a lot less opportunity to actually bump into people and have things happen in the game because of it. That's why I don't like flying.
Kata, overall I can agree with the common criticisms I went over in this video, though I think for a classic version, some of them wouldn't be nearly as impactful due to the more static, last patch nature of the game now. Also, I think the out-of-game influences, such as other games, MMO fatigue, and the rise of PvP alternatives, were a bigger factor than people give them credit for. But that's, of course, just all in my opinion. What do you think? Was WoW destined to drop off whatever they did? Did Blizzard just drop the ball on Kata, or something else entirely perhaps? Also, did you play Kata back then? Do you have any strong memories or impressions of your time of it? And how about a Kata classic? So many questions. Either way, let me know your thoughts on everything I've gone over here today. If you like the discussion, drop a like, it helps the channel grow. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.
Okay, so how many of you, first of all, let's answer the first, actually, first of all, definitely if you're watching this on stream or on, I'll send the link in stream or on stream, but if you're watching this on YouTube, please go to Willie's channel and give him a like on the video. Subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. He's probably top 1 or 2 people doing content for World of Warcraft these days. So puts out some really good videos. Definitely go to his channel. Anyways, let's answer the first question that he asked. Kata Classic. How many of you guys are playing Kata Classic? I will not be. I cannot imagine playing Kata Classic, to be honest. Anyways, personally, me, Cataclysmic, I don't see myself playing. I will go back and play Vanilla Fresh if they ever have it. I'll go to private servers if I have to, but I have no interest in reliving Cataclysmic at all. And the fact I'd say that the bulk of the viewers that come to my channel, they don't really care to watch it as well. So dabble for a bit if I'm bored. Yeah, I mean, to each their own. I'm sure there's going to be players that will play it. I don't see it being very popular. Like, I honestly think it's going to see a massive drop in player base when Cataclysmic comes out. They will lose virtually all of their classic player base, because to a lot of people, like, classic World of Warcraft ends with Wrath of the Lich King. And there's literally a line in the sand. Once they go past Wrath, that's it. They're done. Like, they will not play anymore. I'm one of those people. I will not try it. I will move to a private server. So you will uninstall the game if they force me to play I mean, nobody's forcing you to play Cataclysmic. You can play if you, but if they don't come up with a fresh vanilla server, I'll go play on a private server. I will not play Cataclysmic. I have no interest in trying it again. Cata was where I quit the game for good. No point doing it again. It's my opinion as well. So, anyways, the point of his video was he was making was that at Cataclysm, that's where the game kind of started to go downhill. To me personally, it was in Wrath, and I'm enjoying Wrath now. I am enjoying it now, but it was at that point where I first noticed that, hey, you know what? I'm kind of bored of World of Warcraft again, and I stopped playing, and eventually canceled my account in Cataclysm. But it was probably about 6 months before Cataclysm came out that I was just like, I'm done. I'm not playing this game anymore, or for now anyways. Went back and tried Cataclysm for a few months, and then eventually just gave up on it. And every expansion up until Legion, or BFA actually, sorry, I've tried every single expansion. I bought it and played it on day one, and played it for like anywhere from a month to like 6 months, depending on the expansion. And then when I got into streaming was during WoD, and I was basically forcing myself to play WoD for content on the stream. I wasn't really enjoying the game, but I was enjoying streaming, and I needed something to play. So anyways, my personal opinion is that the game started to shift during Wrath. That's when it was noticed. I believe that evidence supports that, with the fact that the number of players playing the game started to stagnate at that point. And that means that with all the new people that you had coming in for that expansion, you had equally as many people that were leaving during that expansion as well. So I think that says a lot. Anyways, great video by Willie. I'm going to end this video here. If you're watching this on YouTube and you enjoyed the commentary, please consider giving me a like and subscribing to the channel, or you can come talk to me on stream. I stream 6 nights a week at 9 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/Aladar. The links for all that will be down below, including the links to Willie's video, Willie's channel as well. So you can go and give him a like and subscribe as well. Thanks a lot for watching the video, and we'll see you next time.